He made the whole world laugh, but inside, he was crying. Behind the funny mustache, the silly walk, and the big shoes was a man who faced deep pain, poverty, and rejection. This is not just the story of a comedian. It's the story of a fighter, a dreamer, a legend. This is the story of Charlie Chaplin, the man who turned his pain into laughter. Charlie Chaplin, a boy from the streets. The world knows him as a legend. But Charlie Chaplin's story didn't begin with fame, lights, or laughter. It started in the dark streets of London, in a poor family, where every meal was a struggle, and every day was a fight to survive. Charlie Chaplin was born on April 16, 1889, in London. His full name was Charles Spencer Chaplin. His mother, Hannah, was a singer and actress. His father, Charles Chaplin Sr., was also a performer. But Charlie's childhood was anything but happy. His parents separated when he was just a little boy. And soon after, his father disappeared from his life completely. His mother tried to raise him and his brother Sidney all alone. But life was cruel. Hannah lost her job because of her weak voice. They had no money, no food, and sometimes no roof over their heads. Charlie was just 5 years old when he saw his mother go to bed hungry so her children could eat. There were days they had to walk miles just to find a place to sleep. They stayed in workhouses, homes for the poor. And when things got worse, Charlie's mother was taken to a mental hospital. She suffered from mental illness and couldn't care for her children anymore. Charlie and his brother were sent to live in an orphanage. Imagine being just a child, left alone in a cold, strange place. No parents, no hugs, just rules and sadness. But Charlie had something that helped him survive. His imagination. He would watch people around him and copy their movements. He found humor in the smallest things, even in hard times. He would make funny faces, walk in silly ways, and make other children laugh. Even though his heart was heavy, he used laughter to lift himself up. When Charlie turned 9, he joined a children's dance group. He loved performing on stage. The audience's laughter gave him strength. He realized this is what he wanted to do. Make people smile. But life still tested him. He had to work many jobs, cleaning, delivering papers, printing. But he never gave up his dream. Every time he got on stage, even for a few minutes, he felt alive. He felt like he mattered. When he was a teenager, he got a small role in a comedy show. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something big. He slowly became known in the theater world. His comic timing, funny expressions, and natural talent made people notice him. Charlie's big break came when a theater company called Fred Carnot Troupe invited him to tour America. This was the moment that changed everything. America was a land of opportunity, and Charlie was ready. He arrived in the United States in 1910. It was his first time outside of England. Everything was new. The streets were wider, the buildings taller, and the people spoke faster. But Charlie didn't care. He was here to follow his dream. He started performing in stage shows across the U.S. At first, not everyone understood his English humor. But slowly, his charm began to win people over. He used his body more than words. His face spoke louder than his voice. He didn't need language. He had expression. Then, something magical happened. A film studio called Keystone Studios saw him perform and offered him a job. They wanted him to act in silent movies. It was 1914, and silent films were becoming popular. Charlie didn't know anything about movies, but he was ready to learn. In his first few films, he struggled. He didn't like the way directors told him what to do. He wanted to add his own ideas. He believed in freedom while acting. One day, he walked onto the set wearing a tight coat, oversized pants, a small mustache, a bowler hat, and carried a cane. That day, the world met the famous character, the tramp. This poor but kind man with a funny walk, silly hat, and sad eyes became a symbol of silent comedy. People across the world loved him. He made them laugh, cry, and feel connected. But behind the tramp, there was a man who still missed his mother, who remembered sleeping on cold floors, and who carried the pain of his childhood. He used that pain to create art. Charlie Chaplin turned his suffering into something beautiful. Laughter. He once said, "To truly laugh, you must be able to take your pain and play with it." That's what he did. That's what made him special. As Chaplin's fame grew, so did his control over his work. He wanted to write, direct, and produce his own films. And he did. He wasn't just a great actor. He was a genius filmmaker. But his journey had only just begun. The road ahead was full of success, heartbreak, love, hate, and even exile. The boy from the streets of London was now a star, but fame came with its own price. Charlie Chaplin was no longer just a stage performer. After years of struggle, he had finally stepped into the world of silent films. And he didn't just step in, he made it his own. When Charlie first appeared on screen as the Tramp, people instantly fell in love with him. The character was poor, clumsy, and silly, but he had a good heart. He helped the weak, stood up to bullies, and always tried to do the right thing. People saw a piece of themselves in him. At a time when the world was filled with pain, wars, poverty, and hardship, Charlie brought joy. His films didn't use words, but they spoke directly to people's hearts. All across America and even in other countries, audiences lined up to watch him. As his popularity grew, so did his confidence. Charlie started writing and directing his own films. He knew what he wanted to say, and he didn't want others to control his message. This was a bold move for someone so new to the film industry. But Charlie had always believed in following his heart. His early short films like The Kid Auto Races at Venice and Mabel's Strange Predicament were simple comedies. But soon he started mixing humor with deeper emotions. In 1921 he released The Kid, one of his most famous films. It wasn't just funny, it was powerful and emotional. The Kid told the story of a poor man who finds and raises an abandoned child. The love between the two characters touched millions of viewers. Many didn't know, but Charlie was drawing from his own painful past. His separation from his mother, his life in the workhouses, his longing for love. He was telling his story through the camera. The film was a huge success. It made Charlie a global star. Now he had money, fame, and creative freedom. He built his own studio and started working on more films. He believed films could make people think, not just laugh. But as his fame rose, people also started watching his personal life closely. He was known to be a perfectionist. He would shoot the same scene hundreds of times until he was satisfied. Some called him a genius. Others said he was difficult. Charlie also had complicated relationships. He married young actresses, some much younger than him. These marriages often ended in public scandals and painful divorces. The media followed every detail, sometimes turning public opinion against him. Still, Charlie continued to create magic on screen. In 1925 he released The Gold Rush, another masterpiece. In one famous scene, the tramp eats his shoe to survive hunger. It was both hilarious and heartbreaking. The film showed how poverty crushes people, and how laughter helps them rise. Charlie once said, "Life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in long shot." This was his gift. He could take sadness and turn it into art. In 1931 he released City Lights. By then most films had started using sound. But Charlie didn't want to give up silent films. He believed actions and emotions spoke louder than words. City Lights became a timeless classic. It told the story of a poor man who falls in love with a blind flower girl. He helps her, supports her, even risks everything for her. In the end, when she gets her eyesight back and realizes he was the one who helped her all along, the moment is pure emotion. That final scene brought tears to millions of eyes. Even today, it is remembered as one of the greatest endings in film history. But while Charlie's films were loved by audiences, some people in power didn't like him. Charlie often made fun of the rich, of the police, and of authority. He believed in fairness, in kindness, and in equality. These views made him unpopular with some political leaders. In the late 1930s, the world was changing again. War was coming. Adolf Hitler had risen to power in Germany. Many people were afraid to speak against him. But Charlie took a bold step. In 1940 he made The Great Dictator. In this film, Charlie played two roles, one of a cruel dictator named Hinkle, a clear reference to Hitler, and the other of a poor Jewish barber who looks just like him. It was a brave, risky move. The film made fun of Hitler and exposed the danger of hatred and dictatorship. At the end, Charlie gave a powerful speech, not as a character but as himself. He spoke about peace, unity, and the need for humanity to stand together. It was not just a movie, it was a message to the world. But this boldness had a cost. Many powerful people in the United States didn't like Charlie's views. They began to question his politics. They called him a communist, even though he said he wasn't. The FBI started watching him. His past relationships, his political beliefs, his opinions, all came under fire. Charlie never became a U.S. citizen, and that made things worse. People started turning against him. In 1952, when he went to Europe to promote his new film, the U.S. government told him he was no longer welcome back. Imagine that. A man who had made America laugh for decades, now banned from returning. Charlie was deeply hurt. He had given so much to the country, and now he felt betrayed. So he decided to stay in Switzerland with his family. He continued to write, direct, and live a quieter life. But the pain of exile never left him. Still, Charlie Chaplin's story didn't end there. His final years would bring both peace and recognition. The world would once again remember the genius behind the cane, the hat, and the mustache. Here is part 3 of your YouTube story on Charlie Chaplin, written in simple, emotional, and human language. This part continues with Charlie's life in exile, his later films, and the emotional journey of being rejected by one nation but loved by the world. The year was 1952. Charlie Chaplin was no longer welcome in the United States, the country where he had built his career, made his name, and become a global icon. The land where millions had once cheered for the tramp had now shut its doors on him. It was a painful moment. Charlie was not just leaving a place. He was leaving behind a lifetime of memories. He had given everything to Hollywood. He had made people laugh, think, and feel. And yet, because of political suspicion and fear, he was forced to leave. He moved to a quiet village in Switzerland with his wife, Una, and their children. Far away from the noise of Hollywood, Charlie found peace in nature and family. His home was a beautiful house on a hill, surrounded by trees and mountains. Life was slower there, simple. But inside, Charlie was not at peace. He felt betrayed. He missed the stage, the camera, the audience. He missed creating. He wasn't ready to stop, so he didn't. Even in exile, Charlie Chaplin continued making films. In 1957, he released A King in New York. It was a bold movie, funny but sharp. Through comedy, he spoke about his own experience, about politics, media, and fear. He showed how one man could be loved one day and hated the next. It was clear. Charlie was still using his art to speak his truth. The film was not released in America. But in Europe and other parts of the world, people watched and listened. They understood the pain behind the jokes. They knew the man behind the mustache was still trying to connect with them. By now, Charlie was growing older. His body slowed down, but his mind was still sharp. He spent more time with his children, told stories, played the violin, and wrote music. He loved music. In fact, he had written the soundtracks for many of his own films. He believed music spoke the language of the heart. Though many in America had turned against him, his fans around the world never forgot him. In places like France, India, Japan, and South America, people still admired him. They remembered the poor man with the cane who gave them hope during hard times. And slowly, even the world he had left behind began to change. In the 1960s, a new generation of artists and filmmakers started speaking up. They talked about freedom, love, and justice, the same things Charlie had always believed in. People began to look at his work again. Critics who once judged him now called him a genius. His old films were shown in theaters once more. Film schools studied his techniques. Young actors tried to copy his expressions. The world had finally started to understand his greatness. But the most emotional moment came in 1972. 20 years after he was banned, the Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars, decided to honor Charlie Chaplin with a Lifetime Achievement Award. They invited him to return to the United States for the ceremony. It was a huge step. After all the anger, rejection, and pain, America was now asking Charlie to come back. At first, he didn't know if he should go. He had been deeply hurt. But his family encouraged him. His wife, Una, said, "This is your moment." And so, after 2 decades in exile, the silent clown returned to the land that once silenced him. On the night of the Oscars, the room was filled with stars, young and old, famous and unknown. As Charlie Chaplin walked onto the stage, the entire crowd stood up. They clapped, and clapped, and clapped. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. His face said it all. Gratitude, pain, love, and peace. The standing ovation lasted for 12 full minutes, the longest in Oscar history. It was not just an award. It was an apology. It was forgiveness. It was a final bow from a man who had made the world laugh even when he couldn't laugh himself. Charlie continued living in Switzerland after that, but he was happy. He had been recognized, not just for his films but for his spirit. He had shown the world that art can survive politics, time, and even exile. In 1975, Queen Elizabeth II knighted him. He became Sir Charlie Chaplin, a boy once raised in orphanages now honored by the Queen herself. But even legends must sleep. Charlie Chaplin passed away on Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88. He died peacefully in his sleep at home, with his family around him. The world mourned. News of his death spread across continents. People everywhere cried, not because they lost a star but because they lost a friend. A man who made them smile through their darkest days. The New York Times wrote, "He was a genius whose art belonged to the people of every country." And it was true. After his death, something strange happened. 2 men stole his coffin from the cemetery and tried to demand money from the family. It shocked the world. But his body was found and reburied safely. That event showed something deep. Charlie Chaplin's body was gone, but his spirit still mattered. Even in death, his story continued. Today, Charlie Chaplin is not just remembered as an actor or director. He is remembered as a symbol of resilience, of creativity, of the power of laughter. His character, the tramp, still walks in the hearts of millions. You don't need to understand English to understand Charlie. You don't need to be rich, educated, or powerful. You just need a heart. And if you have one, Charlie Chaplin will find a way to touch it. Here is part 4 of the story on Charlie Chaplin for your YouTube English Stories channel. This part explores Chaplin's personal life, creative philosophy, and the deep emotions behind his comedy, still in a simple, engaging, and realistic tone. Everyone knows Charlie Chaplin as the tramp, the man with the funny walk, bowler hat, cane, and little mustache. But very few people truly knew the man behind that smile. Behind the humor was someone much more complex, a man who faced deep struggles, carried heavy pain, and yet chose to make others laugh. Chaplin's personal life was filled with both love and loneliness. He was married 4 times. His first 3 marriages ended in heartbreak and scandal. He often fell in love with young women who were actresses in his films. But those relationships didn't last. The media criticized him for it. Many people judged him. Some called him selfish. Others called him difficult. But in 1943 he met someone different. Her name was Una O'Neill, the daughter of famous American playwright Eugene O'Neill. Charlie was 54. Una was just 18. Many people questioned the age gap. But their love was real and lasting. Una brought peace into Charlie's life. She didn't care about fame. She loved him for who he was, not for who the world thought he was. They got married and had 8 children together. For the first time in his life, Charlie had a stable, happy home. Even in exile, far from Hollywood, he found joy in his family. He would play the violin, tell bedtime stories, and sit quietly in the garden watching his children laugh, something he missed as a child. His children didn't know Charlie Chaplin, the legend. To them he was just Papa. In these quiet years, Charlie did a lot of thinking. He looked back on his life and wrote his autobiography, a book where he finally told the world his full story. In it, he wrote openly about his childhood, his mother's mental illness, his fears, and his dreams. He wrote about how laughter had saved his life. How, as a boy living in the slums of London, he had felt invisible. But when he made people laugh, he felt seen, heard, and loved. That was the secret behind all his films. He didn't make comedies just to be funny. He made them to heal. He believed that comedy and tragedy were deeply connected. In fact, he once said, "I always like walking in the rain, so no one can see me crying." That one sentence shows who he really was. The man who made the world laugh was often crying inside. But he didn't want anyone to worry. He wanted to carry the pain for others so they could smile. His films reflected that idea. In modern times, he made fun of machines taking over people's lives. In City Lights, he showed love without words. In The Kid, he shared the bond between an orphan and a poor man. Each movie had a message about love, kindness, struggle, or hope. And the beauty of his work was this: he didn't need language. His films were silent, but they spoke louder than words. Anyone from anywhere, rich or poor, young or old, English-speaking or not, could understand and feel his stories. Charlie once said, "We think too much and feel too little." He wanted the world to feel again. He wanted us to remember what it means to be human. He used a simple character, the tramp, to show big ideas. That little man in big shoes became a voice for the poor, the lonely, and the forgotten. But being a genius wasn't easy. Charlie was known to be a perfectionist. He would spend weeks filming a single scene. He would write his own music, edit his films himself, and even act out other characters to show his actors what he wanted. He would get angry if something wasn't right. People around him sometimes felt tired or frustrated. But deep inside they respected him. They knew he didn't want fame. He wanted truth. He wanted every scene to feel real. He didn't care about money. He cared about meaning. Even in Switzerland, far from the world stage, he kept writing ideas, drawing sketches, and composing music. His creative fire never died. It was as if something inside him kept whispering, "Keep going. Don't stop." One of his daughters, Geraldine Chaplin, followed in his footsteps and became an actress. She once said, "My father gave everything to his art. His pain, his joy, his whole heart." As time passed, Charlie's body grew weaker. He walked slowly, his hands shook, and his speech became soft. But his eyes still sparkled with life. In 1972, when he returned to the United States for the Oscars, people saw an old man, but they also saw the soul of a boy who had never stopped dreaming. A few years later, in 1975, the Queen of England made him a knight, Sir Charles Chaplin. For a boy who once slept in the streets of London, this was a full-circle moment. The child who had nothing was now honored by the highest crown. Yet Charlie remained humble. He once said, "Fame means nothing. It's what you do with your life that matters." And he had done something truly great. He had made the world kinder. He had given people hope. In his final years, he enjoyed watching the sunrise from his garden, reading letters from fans, and listening to music. He died on December 25, 1977, on Christmas morning. One last silent moment like the ending of his films. Peaceful, gentle, aimless. The world wept, but they also smiled because Charlie would have wanted it that way. Charlie Chaplin died on Christmas Day in 1977, but his story didn't end there. In fact, the world never truly said goodbye to him. His body may have left, but his spirit, his art, and his message continue to live on, even today. Every time someone watches one of his films and laughs, every time a child sees the tramp walk with that funny little wobble, Every time someone finds comfort in a sad moment through a smile. That's Charlie Chaplin living again. His films were more than just entertainment. They were lessons about life, told without loud words or big action. He didn't need special effects. He didn't need superheroes or explosions. He just needed his face, his walk, and his heart. His message was simple but powerful. Even in the hardest times we can still laugh. And even in laughter we can still feel deeply. Today, people of all ages from all countries still watch Modern Times, The Kid, City Lights, and The Great Dictator. These films are still shown in film schools, festivals, and homes around the world. New generations are discovering Charlie Chaplin, and they're amazed that something made over 100 years ago can still make them laugh and cry. Think about that. No language, no color, no big studio, just pure emotion and truth. In a time when technology rules everything, Chaplin's silent films feel even more special. He reminds us that connection doesn't always need tone. Sometimes a simple look or gesture says more than words ever could. Chaplin's influence can be seen everywhere. Famous directors like Martin Scorsese, Woody Allen, Stanley Kubrick, and even Walt Disney admired his work. Comedians like Robin Williams, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, and Jim Carrey were inspired by him. They all learned from Charlie how to use body language, timing, and emotion to make people laugh without saying much. In fact, without Charlie Chaplin, there might never have been a Mr. Bean. The tramp became a global icon. His image, hat, mustache, cane, and big shoes, has been printed on t-shirts, posters, murals, stamps, and statues. He doesn't belong to one country anymore. He belongs to the world. In 2016, the Swiss government opened the Chaplin's World Museum in Charlie's old home. Visitors can walk through the rooms where he lived, see his personal things, his old cameras, and even walk through sets from his movies. It's more than just a museum. It's a journey into the soul of a man who gave his life to laughter. Thousands visit every year, not just to see his things but to feel what he stood for. And many leave with tears in their eyes and smiles on their faces. That's the power of Charlie Chaplin. But what made him so different? Why does he still matter? Because Charlie never acted for attention. He acted for connection. He made films to reach the lonely, to lift the broken, to remind people that they are not alone. He understood pain because he lived it. He understood struggle because he grew up with nothing. He understood silence because he had to express everything without words. He once said, "You'll never find rainbows if you're looking down." That one line can change a person's day. That's the beauty of Chaplin. He gave us joy, not by pretending life was perfect, but by showing us that we can survive it with love and laughter. Even today, when the world feels uncertain, when people are divided, when technology moves too fast, Chaplin reminds us to slow down, to laugh a little, care more, to be kind. He didn't need to speak to make the world listen. He didn't have riches in the beginning, but he gave the world something priceless. Even in his silence, Charlie Chaplin was one of the loudest voices of the 20th century. There's a famous quote often linked to him, though no one knows for sure if he said it. "I remain just one thing, and one thing only, a clown. It places me on a far higher plane than any politician." Charlie never chased power. He chased meaning. And that's why, long after presidents are forgotten, kings are buried, and celebrities fade, Chaplin remains. So what can we learn from his story? We learn that it's okay to start with nothing. That dreams are not for the rich. They're for the brave. We learn that pain can become art, and sadness can become strength. We learn that the simplest stories are often the most powerful. But most importantly, we learn that no matter how dark life gets, there is always room for a little light. Charlie's light still shines. And if you ever feel like giving up, just watch one of his films. Let him walk into your heart with his wobbly feet, look into your soul with his sad eyes, and leave behind a little bit of laughter. That's what he always wanted. And maybe, just maybe, that's all we really need.